evening, everybody. Let me fix my volume levels. I had rebooted Windows here, and something looks a little bit off. So this real quick while you get some of the scenery. We've got some short days coming here. It's already getting dark by the time we do the webcast. Level 16. Okay. How's that? Is that a little bit better? Let's see here. Almost finished. Sorry, guys. Okay, there it is. I don't know what the deal is with Windows. Yeah, this is the panel I'm looking at. Every time I reboot the computers, the sound gets all changed around, and I have to go into properties and fix the microphone level. It was down to 16. So I don't know. Okay, well anyway, I think it's all fixed. So we're good to go for another show. Let me tweak my levels here. This computer that I'm talking on, by the way, I took this out about 4 or 5 hours ago. I took it outside and opened it up and used the air duster on it, because it was acting a little bit funny earlier, and I suspect there was some overheating. Anyway, some big changes in Texas and Oklahoma. Look at that map. That's much different from anything that we've seen during the past few weeks. And let me bring up my drawing tool here. And there it is, north winds coming out of Kansas, upslope flow in West Texas. So there's that upslope flow. And when we have humid air and upslope flow in any source of dynamic lift, we'll get clouds and showers, and that's certainly the case there on the high plains of Texas. And you'll notice also easterly winds in New Mexico, so some of the upslope flow working into the higher terrain across the Sangre de Cristos and whatever mountains these are. I forgot the name of them, near Alamogordo. So yeah, this is all polar air coming southward. And what happened with the Pacific air? Remember we were talking about that a couple days ago? That was over Arizona the last time we talked, and I think it slowly filtered eastward a little bit. I don't know. We'll take a look and figure that out. What I would want to do is look at the potential temperature map. So let me check that out real quick. Switch over and take a look at the potential temperature map. Got to play that game of finding out which tab it's under. There it is. Okay, so there's the current plot, 28th at 01Z. So that looks good. Now, normally what we expect to find this time of year is very warm temperatures in the Four Corners area and the desert southwest and on up into the Great Basin area. And we don't really have that. We have what looks like depressed values in this area here. And there's kind of a thermal gradient from Las Vegas to Tucson. So I think what we've had is a little bit of polar air work across Arizona, modify a little bit, and it caught up to the Canadian front coming from the east. So I think the real tropical air is well to the south down in Mexico. There's probably a front down here in northwest Mexico, somewhere in that area. And the other front, the Canadian front, I don't know, I'm not too sure where it is in the Four Corners, but definitely in western New Mexico, it's right there. And we can trace that on up into East Texas, kind of like that right there. And then definitely we can see that through Little Rock, Memphis, on up to Nashville and Pittsburgh, and up to upstate New York like that. So let me scroll the map and you can see the boundary. These potential temperature maps, they're so underutilized, and I don't understand it. These are very useful. They tend to standardize the temperature readings. So this is better than looking at isotherms. And that gradient stands right out. There it is. And we can check the East Coast there, all the way up into the Northeast U.S. I think this is all tropical air all the way up the East Coast. So, looks like a warm day there on the Northeast Coast, and up there where they don't have air conditioning, I'm sure they are sweltering. Cold air source looks like it is somewhere in the Lake Superior area, maybe northward. So that's the core of the cold air there in the north. And out west, I don't see a real defined core out here. Maybe a little bit of a thermal ridge over California, a little bit of strong heating for some reason in this area. Maybe some upper level subsidence working on that region. Okay, so we've got kind of a general picture of what's happening. So there you go. That's kind of the yeah, something like that right there. That's the division of air masses. Canadian polar, if you want to call it that. Maritime polar. I like the old systems. I don't know what happened to the old air mass nomenclature, but the Southeast U.S., maritime tropical. And then, yeah, this is kind of all continuous all the way down to South Texas. All right, one map source I've found that's very interesting to look at is College DuPage. Let me bring this up. Now, of course, you can see we're kind of forced to look at isotherms, but, you know, we can just kind of work with that. I would prefer to see a potential temperature. But there's the maps for earlier today, 18Z, and this is Texas. Let me set this up so you can read everything. Okay, so at the top right, this tells you what time we're looking at. So this is about 2 p.m. this afternoon. So the leading edge of the front, something like that right there. So from about Paducah, Kentucky, down to Fort Smith, Dallas, and around Kerrville, Texas. And you notice that there is north winds out in this area, south of the boundary. And we have to keep in mind the front is defined by density. In other words, temperature. So we're not looking for wind shifts like where the flow turns from north to easterly or anything like that. There is a wind division there, certainly. See that right there? So, yeah, you'll definitely add that boundary to your analysis, just in case, you know, there's convergence happening here. So you see that happening right there. Convergence all the way from New Orleans out to Beaumont and up to College Station. But the true front is up to the north along the thermal boundaries. So that's the way you need to analyze these graphics. And you can see that with that increase in cold air advection, we get the higher pressures following behind. And there's the isopleths showing the pressure isobars, and then we have high pressure in Kansas right there. All right, so that's kind of what's happening in Texas, and we can kind of look at the short term with this NAM model. This is the current time here. So it looks like the front may be still up in southeast Oklahoma, maybe up to Little Rock and down I-35. Doesn't look like it's reached East Texas yet. And then for tomorrow, you can see that we've got the high pressure pushing southward. And we do warm up later during the day, and temperatures come up, and we still get up to about 86 there in Shreveport. So it looks like that front is not going to, looks like it's kind of stalled right around here from about northern Mississippi tomorrow, out to about Longview, and then down to San Antonio. But wow, look at those temperatures in West Texas, 50s, 59 there at Lubbock, 63 at Midland, and 53 at Amarillo. And even when you get up in Colorado, I mean, you know, this is 21Z, this is 4 p.m., and we're seeing temperatures of around 50 in the Lamar and Springfield area. Just amazing cold air in that region. So the main thrust of that Canadian cold air advection area, and I think there's probably some evaporation or cooling effects going on. But yeah, that's hitting the high plains there pretty hard there. Now let's take a look in the southwestern U.S. and we'll see what's going on in that region. I know we've got a few viewers in that area. In fact, let me see who we have on right now. We have Fun with Tech and Ryan, Kevin McKinney. Justin Pulliam asks if this is the second one tonight. No, I accidentally hit the streaming button around 8 o'clock, and there was about 2 seconds of video that went out. I deleted that, and that kind of goofed things up a little bit. Stephen R. is here. Ryan Toomey says, heavy rain looking to move in the next 48 hours and flood us out. So he's in Florida there. Fun with Tech mentions the mic level is low. That was at 9:06 p.m. I think I fixed that earlier. Let me look at my levels here. Let's see. Yeah, this is the outgoing levels here, and it looks pretty good. Maybe just a little bit hot. Let me bring that down just a little bit. Okay. Ryan Toomey says voice, audio, sound, video looks all good. And David Moore says a friend of his is in southern Utah, and they had sleet today there in September of all times. September, well, you know, that does happen. You do get early cool season systems moving through the area, and let's check that out. Let me set up my monitors here. And we go to this afternoon. This is about 3 p.m. And we see north winds there in Utah. North winds across the high plains of Nevada. 69 there at Tonopah. 82 in Las Vegas. So it is a little bit warm in the lower elevations. But up in the higher elevations, we do have 50s and 60s. And there's probably very steep lapse rates there. That would help contribute to sleet reaching the ground in that area. When we have steep lapse rates, that means we have cold air very close to the surface, which means it has to fall through a shorter distance before it reaches the surface. So that allows hail and sleet to more easily reach the ground. So 89 there for Phoenix and 94. So there's been a little bit of air mass modification, but the flow is out of the north. So let's advance this and see what happens over the next 24 hours. Maybe we'll start doing the webcast this way. We'll go region by region. I know that would probably make a lot of people happy there. So overnight, we just see the radiational cooling. You can see the temperatures there in northern Nevada dropping into the 30s around Elko and Ely. And that's due to the dry air, the very strong radiational cooling. And normally, Elko gets their first freeze of the year around this time of the season. 53 in, looks like Ogden, and then 67, very nice and cool there at Phoenix. And normally, during hot weather in Phoenix, you're looking at lows around 82 degrees. And then for tomorrow, running up 24 hours, there's max heating. We come up to 92 there at Phoenix and a cool 84 in Vegas. And then up in the high plains, 60s there. So, yeah, we're under the influence of some polar air. in the Great Basin area. But the San Joaquin Valley, very hot, 95 at Bakersfield and 96 in Fresno. So very hot in that region. Probably a little bit of adiabatic warming going on, subsidence, or maybe we've had some of this air crossing the mountains and warming. Quick look, very quick look at the Pacific Northwest. This will be the current conditions right there. We can see easterly flow across Washington and Oregon. Okay, easterly flow, that's a sign of polar air in the Rocky Mountain region. So there's a very dense air mass there, and that's driving easterly flow into the Seattle and Portland area. And we do see a little bit of a ridge in place in Alberta and British Columbia. And then for the next 24 hours, you can see some areas of western Wyoming going below freezing. So we're seeing some of the first freezes of the year there. And then for tomorrow afternoon, looks like it's pretty warm there in Washington, 84 degrees there. So it looks like a lot of air mass modification taking place. And I think maybe some of that easterly flow there may be a bit of thermal low activity in this area. But we're going to go to the synoptic scale chart and kind of work that out. This is the synoptic scale chart. So this is kind of like the master key of what's happening. And so what do we got? We've got a large Canadian air mass over the central U.S. right there. And we can see the colder air with the lower thicknesses over Utah and Colorado. So a little bit of a section of a cold air mass over that region there. And then the majority of the cold air is up in the Lake Superior, Ontario and Manitoba area, just like that. So that's driving a front, which is moving very slowly southward. And let's see, conditions are very warm there in Washington and down all the way to the San Joaquin Valley. So what's happening there? I guess they just are not getting much of that polar air moving eastward. What's happening is I think they're under an area where there's very strong sinking, helping to bring temperatures up. And let's see, that's pretty much all that's going on except for Maria coming close to the coast of the Carolinas, and we're expecting that to rapidly recurve to the east. So it's a relatively simple pattern there. And let's take a look at some of the other areas, the eastern U.S. And there we can see Maria off the coast. Some sustained 55-knot winds there. And then the current time is looking something like this. We can see that there's already some recurvature of Maria. And very warm temperatures. Earlier today, we were looking at about 90 degrees there around Roanoke, all the way down to Raleigh and pretty much all the way down to Atlanta, 90 degrees, and all the way up to New Jersey, 87, 88. So, yeah, even 91 there up around Syracuse. 90 at Rochester. So, wow, that's some very warm air. And I can see temperatures in the upper 80s there in Vermont and New Hampshire. So, a little bit of a heat wave. And let's see how far north that extends. This is earlier today. 89 all the way up to Burlington And looks like around Montreal, about 86 there. So, yeah, this is about the northern limit of that warm air mass. But cold air off to the east there. And let's see what happens over the next 24 hours. Very rapid progression of that cold air mass eastward. And then for tomorrow, what we're seeing is very strong westerly flow. And good grief, I wish we could clear out the air mass here in Texas this fast. Look at that. This is afternoon highs tomorrow night, or tomorrow afternoon. 55 in upstate New York there. Still about 71 in Boston, 75 in New York, but if you go to the west there, 61 at Buffalo, and then 50s in the Montreal area. So very drastic change, and obviously that cold air is going to move offshore and feed into that remains of Maria off the coast. Okay, I don't know if I can bring up Florida. I think I don't really have it set up to do that, but we can take a look at that on the infrared imagery. I'll move that down so we can see a little bit of Florida. Can run a little bit of a time loop. And earlier this afternoon, this was about 3 or 4 o'clock, and you can see a few showers there from Fort Lauderdale, maybe all the way down to Miami. I don't know if those are surface-based or not. They don't look all that intense, really. And then more development up around the Orlando area to Tampa. But elsewhere, things are pretty clear in the southeast U.S. And then back in Texas, this is where we have some weather going on with that upper level energy approaching. And yeah, take a look at that system out there over the Four Corners area. There's kind of a rotation going on around the Flagstaff area right there. This is the cold core low out in this region. And this little fragment here, this is some of the instability around that cold core low area. The main area of baroclinicity, that's out in Texas here. So weather in this region influenced very strongly by the polar front jet. And that polar front jet looks like it's located, I would say maybe something like that. The stronger storms at this hour, those are pretty much near Del Rio and Eagle Pass. So let's head to the charts and see what we got going on. There's Maria earlier today. Pretty spectacular on the polar orbiter data. It's definitely looking extra tropical there, feeding some dry air into the circulation. And let's see what's happening elsewhere. You know, we don't do that very often, but we can take a look. Looks like a interesting little subtropical system moving across the Straits of Gibraltar there. Looks like a lot of cold air over Russia developing, so we're starting to cool down in parts of western Siberia there. And then we're looking here at, let's see here, this is Korea and China. And you can see that this air mass right here has the distinct look of tropical air. So this looks a lot like what we see in Alabama and Mississippi and Florida this time of year. I mean, look at that. When we zoom in, lots of cumulus clouds. And they're kind of, they've got this clustered appearance, and that's because the inland areas of China are not flat like Louisiana, Mississippi and Tennessee and all that. This is really rugged terrain, so we see a little bit different texture there in China. And then as we go up to the north, looks like a lot of overcast, so there's probably a cold air mass in place there. I would probably think possibly a front in that area, something like that. Then maybe high pressure to the north. So that's how I would analyze that based on what I'm seeing here. And then if there's any strong instability, I would expect there to be maybe some jet, maybe a little bit of a jet segment in this area here. And this boundary in this region right here would be an ideal area for MCS development. Let's see, elsewhere, just a quick look at India, closing out the monsoon season. Looks like a little bit of smoke in that region. And let's look at Australia. Australia there, it's basically like springtime. So it's kind of like March, late March in this, this would be like late March in the U.S. So they're coming out of the cold season, and looks pretty fair there. Looks like maybe a little bit of a subtropical jet, perhaps. These look like transverse bands here, so this definitely has a look of some jet stream interaction. And that's probably about all I'm going to cover there for the rest of the world. That was just kind of a little fun look at what's happening elsewhere. And we'll take a look at NHC. They've got Maria off the coast. Hurricane Maria still out there, Category 1, but pressure's very high there at 979 millibars, so that's beginning the transition. Okay, there's a look at the jet. This is from this morning. This is up at 34,000 feet, 250 millibar chart. So we're seeing the jet from about El Paso up to Kansas and up to Wisconsin, 120 knots in that area. And we've got the upper level low over Utah. So this is where we were talking earlier about steep lapse rates. Upper level low in this area, when you have an upper level low like this, we tend to get cold core convection and usually some very showery, strongly diurnal weather. And looks like that's probably going to be focused there in southern Utah. Okay, we'll go ahead and head into the forecast. There's probably not really any reason to expand on this for 30 minutes, so let's head into the GFS and see what's coming up. Okay, so for the next 2 weeks, let's see what's going to happen here. There goes Maria off the coast, and there's the high pressure affecting the Midwest. So for tomorrow, there's tomorrow, looks like high pressure covering much of the Midwest and the northern U.S., and looks like the bulk of the cold air over Ontario and Quebec in the Great Lakes area. And then we've got this little spot of cold air hanging on around Utah in Wyoming. So this is an area where thickness is below 564. So that'll have an influence locally, and we see a little bit of shower activity in that area. And then going into Friday, let's see what's going to happen. Heading into the weekend, still have high pressure dominating the weather across the northern U.S., and that's driving northerly flow all through the southeast U.S. And then we have upslope flow in Texas there, so clouds and precip there all the way up to New Mexico. And then going into Saturday, still high pressure there. Looks like some sort of system there off the coast of Florida. Where did that come from? Aha, looks like that developed somewhere just south of Key West, between there and Cuba. So we'll have to keep an eye on that there. Looks kind of like a little tropical depression coming together. So for Saturday night, we're going to see that probably off the coast of Georgia there. Not much going on elsewhere. But things do look strongly baroclinic in Nevada, Idaho, and Oregon. See that very strong packing there of the thickness lines. So it looks like we've got a bit of a polar front coming together there. And then maybe the backside of this other front extending up like that right there. So this is for Saturday, and then for Sunday, looks like we see that front advancing a little bit southward through Utah and Colorado. And then the backside of that other air mass in Texas, kind of stationary, banked up against the mountains right there. So we've got, you know, kind of like a northeast flow across the Texas Gulf Coast and then turning around to the south in the Caprock area like that. So a little bit of cyclogenesis there in Colorado, so maybe a new system coming together in this region here. And then looks like we have kind of a separate system up to the north. This looks baroclinic also. So I might be thinking of maybe something like that. Kind of a weird structure there, but I don't think that's occluded quite yet. And then for Monday, heading into Monday, wow, look, that little front is quasi-stationary, maybe moving south a little bit, but man, we can definitely see it there as far as thickness and pressure. All the way from Alamosa through the Four Corners area, through Tonopah, and up to Redding and Red Bluff there. Now, the system up in Manitoba, that looks occluded. You can see that we've got a little bit of a cold pool aloft. So this is all wrapped up. And then we're left with this front up in the Lake Superior area. Starting to get a little bit of tropical flow coming up into Texas. Then for Tuesday, we see that front sinking south a little bit. Looks like it's starting to get a little bit of upper air support. You can see some snow in the higher elevations of Wyoming and Colorado. And possibly some thunderstorms and showers in Kansas. But I think moisture is going to be a little bit of a problem since we don't really have deep flow coming out of the southern Gulf there. A lot of influence from this big high that we've had over the U.S. for several days, and now we can see it pushing off into the East Coast area. Now it's something like this. And so replacing it is this new system. And wow, we're already getting into October. So for Wednesday, it looks like we finally pick up that frontal system, and that brings it in through Oklahoma City and Dallas and Midland, moving up towards Lake Superior. And there's the cold pool right there over Omaha and Sioux Falls. And then for Thursday next week, becoming baroclinic again there in the Pacific Northwest. Looks like the front is somewhere right in this area here. Looks like a little bit of baroclinicity right there also. And then heading into Friday next week, the 6th and 7th, Another system develops as that frontal zone moves out of the Rockies. So this will hit Iowa and Minnesota. And then we get one part of it coming out of the Kansas and Oklahoma area. This is going to be around the 8th. This is getting way out there. So anyway, it looks like some good thunderstorm activity. And that'll quickly move eastward. High pressure moving in, and we're already up to the 10th and 11th. So let's see. Let me just check real quick out in the Gulf and Atlantic. That little depression that we had off the Georgia coast looks like that moves inland, kind of as an easterly wave around Monday. And there's the remains of it moving into Louisiana around Tuesday. And then things are pretty much wrecked by this high pressure. And then, let's see here, one little weak tropical depression coming up the North Carolina coast around the 13th, and maybe something south of Texas around the same time. Okay, then a quick look at NHC, what they've got for the 5-day outlook. Yep, identifying that disturbance there around Florida. Other than that, things look pretty quiet from the Cape Verde area out towards the Caribbean. Okay, let me take a look at the chat, and while I do that, you can look at the infrared imagery. There we go. We'll run a loop on that. Okay, we got Kathy Campbell Wallace, a new name there. Welcome to the program from Wyoming. Excellent. David Moore says his friend was getting sleet with 44 degrees. Yeah, probably cooled down with that sleet coming down. You tend to get very strong evaporational cooling. Justin Polium seeing a little bit of buffering. Ryan says Lee, which is further off in the Atlantic, turned into a Category 3 last evening. He was surprised to see that. We got Tree Nelson here. Justin had to leave. Ryan talking about wet weather for Florida. Yeah, with that disturbance coming up the coast. Stephen R. got a 2-minute shower in East Texas. Ryan looking for 4 to 6 inches through Sunday there in Florida. Already maxed with Irma's rainfall. Okay. So that's probably all I've got for this evening. So I appreciate you all watching, and hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow. And I'm going to get back to work on my book project. I'm trying to get that out as quickly as possible. So you all have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.